If you have something in your body that is creating an inflammatory response, that is jacking up copper, whether it's the IUD or the birth control pill, it's going to be really hard to balance those levels in the body until you get rid of the inflammation.
Samantha, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really looking forward to this episode.
Likewise. Thank you for having me, Courtney.
Yeah. So I was telling you this offline, but I want people to hear this as well. I found you because I speak pretty frequently I talk a lot about birth control in general. And then I also like to share my story with birth control with my audience. And I, a couple of years ago, was looking for a non-hormonal form of birth control. And I got on the paragard, which is, the copper IUD. And I had the strangest experience with it. I ended up getting it taken out within 2 months, and I'll explain more later. I'll give the whole story about it, but I mention it from time to time on my Instagram because a lot of women go to that thinking that it has no effects on their body because it's marketed as non-hormonal. And so it's marketed as having no side effects. And when I shared my story recently, I had someone in my community reach out and say, you need to talk to Samantha Gilbert about this because she talks pretty extensively about this. So I'm very excited to dive into that. Before we do that, can you give everyone a little bit about your background and what you do?
I'd love to. Yes. I'm a nutritional therapy counselor. I've been in practice for a little over 13 years now. And I didn't come to this just, by accident. I actually struggled with copper toxicity myself. It runs in my family. So all that I knew for many, many years until my early 30s was severe depression, severe anxiety, OCD. My OCD was around food in my body. A lot of women can, I know, relate to that. So I was someone that struggled and couldn't seem to figure out what the source of my symptoms were, why I was, constantly doing this back and forth seesaw with my mood. And it was just a huge source of pain for many, many years. And then I finally figured out that I was copper toxic and also a condition called undermethylated. And we can get into methylation as well. So that kind of started me on my journey I was actually a designer in the fashion industry, and that's when my health fell apart. And then that prompted me to go back to school and study more holistic medicine, functional medicine, and start a practice. And here I am. And today we get to talk about how copper impacts women on a significant level.
Oh, I'm so excited to dive into this because I have a bit of an understanding of it just from my personal experience, but I'm excited to hear more about that. I guess we can start out with, maybe I'll just share what my experience was, and then I would love to hear what your experience was. So I had the copper IUD put in, and I work with a functional medicine doctor. And at the time, she even told me she had a little bit of a hesitation, but she was like, let's just watch it. Let's make sure that we really up your zinc. And I want you to talk about this too, the relationship of zinc with copper. And so she wanted me to be on a higher dose of zinc just so that it would level out the copper if there was any sort of effect. And I would say, within weeks, I noticed I had really insanely heavy periods. So within the first month, when I had my first period, I was like, whoa, this is crazy. I was having really horrible cramps, and I've never really experienced a super heavy menstrual cycle, and I don't really get cramps. So that right off the bat, I was like, oh man, this is crazy. Really crazy hormonal, like mood swings. My hunger was really ramped up in a way that I've never experienced outside of being on actual hormonal birth control, which I thought was really interesting. And then the craziest thing to me was that I noticed that it was having an effect on my mental state. I felt very erratic. I felt very, I suddenly was very paranoid. And I've never really experienced paranoia or anything like that, but it was to a level that I was like, something really crazy is going on. And so about a month in, my doctor decided to do some blood work on me. And the craziest thing was my CRP, which is the inflammation marker, was through the roof. Like she was like, oh, this is insane, how high it was. And then we were also testing my copper. My copper levels were really high. We didn't want to take it out because initially, I was super bummed because I had been excited about this being a great option for birth control. And so we decided we'd watch it. She upped my zinc. We retested again, and she was like, Court, you gotta get this taken out. And crazy enough, well, not crazy enough but it's just really interesting to see the lab results. So after that, when I got it taken out, we retested, my CRP went down, my copper went down, the paranoia, all the crazy like mental stuff. And I want to say this lightly, but it felt crazy for me. I felt very erratic. And then within a month of getting it taken out, all my numbers went down. My mental state went back to a normal place. My period went back to normal. And so I feel very passionate about telling women about this, because had I not had a doctor that had pointed it out to me, and then also another thing that I did was I was on a lot of forums online reading. And I mean, I was finding hundreds of comments from women that were saying the exact same thing that they were experiencing. And that's how I was able to connect the dots. But, you know, when I started sharing it about my Instagram, I had a lot of women reach out going, oh my God, I never connected the dots with X, Y, and Z that I was struggling with.
Yeah, most unfortunately, the connection never happens because women start to have these experiences that you had. They go to their doctor, and most doctors, thank God you have a great doctor that understands these relationships. But unfortunately, and I'm not knocking doctors here, okay? We have some amazing doctors in the world. So I'm not coming from a place of disparaging here. But every week in my clinic, I have women tell me, yeah, I went back and, they told me that couldn't happen. That wasn't possible. Is it something else? And constantly, the gaslighting, I think, is really strong. So yeah. I'm glad that you have that support, that you had that support at the time that it happened, because paranoia and psychotic episodes are common when with this device. It's a class 2 medical device. And I think a lot of women, I'd like for them to know that since it first came into existence 30 years ago, there have been more than 40,000 reports to the FDA in their adverse events reporting system. We know that reporting systems are underreported. If we look at theirs, that's significantly underreported. So that to me is really telling. I think that they know that this is a problem. They know that perforation of the cervix and the uterus is possible. That's why I always encourage women, please don't take it out yourself. Please have someone remove it for you, because you don't want to perforate that delicate area. So I think raising awareness is so key. I have never had the copper IUD, but I was on the birth control pill when I was in my 20s for a short period of time, and I didn't tolerate that at all. It significantly impacted my mood, and also from a physical standpoint, I had terrible yeast infections, and my skin started breaking out. I always had very good skin. I couldn't understand, what was going on. Of course, later, now we know how harmful birth control is in general. But it's frustrating that women are told that this is safe. Side effects are very rare. Well, ladies, the side effects are not rare. This is not a safe device. You do not want this inside your uterus.
I'm curious to know how do you get copper toxicity from the paragard?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this device is that it's got the 2 copper sleeves along the arms, and those are continually releasing copper into the lining of the uterus. And what happens is this process produces an inflammatory response that is a toxin to sperm. So, which is going to prevent fertilization, right? But do we really want an inflammatory response inside our uterus? That's a delicate area, and we really don't want something that's going to throw off that delicate balance. I mean, copper is important, and I know there's a lot of information out there about copper and zinc and diametrically opposed concepts about them, but I always want people to remember that when copper is elevated, yes, we need copper, but when it's elevated, you're in a pro-inflammatory state. And that's what's happening inside your uterus. And then, of course, that has impacts in other areas of the body, specifically the brain. That's a problem. And that's why I think these things should be taken off the market. I know some women have reported, I think it's a very small percentage, that they tolerate the copper IUD just fine. But I would say, for the most part, I think that there are negative side effects, much more so than normalcy.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is crazy. I mean, it goes back to, this still is it's considered a pharmaceutical in a way, right? Because it's regulated
Yes.
in that way.
Class 2 medical device. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's the classic, big pharma doesn't want to admit that they're like, what do I want to, like, golden child has all these side effects and problems, I mean, they make so much money off of it. I remember like this is a bit of a side tangent, but my insurance ended up not even covering it. And I got a bill for this thing for $800. And I'm just
Wow.
I know, it's so crazy. And, I think that's what people don't understand is they think that just because it's being offered, that there's no sort of side effects for it, that it's totally safe, that there's no way that they could be putting this on the shelf. And what I realized in this experience, and, I told you earlier that I found this forum there was a time that I was up for like 4 hours reading comments from, hundreds of women having a very similar experience with this paragard. And do you think that there is a set of women that it doesn't affect, or do you think women that say that the paragard is not affecting them, they're just not aware of the symptoms?
That's a great question, Courtney. I think that there is often lack of awareness. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Eventually, just like the birth control pill, there will be problems because you can't have a heavy metal in your body that is critical to so many processes throughout the body that's going to suppress zinc and not have issues over time. They tell women that this can be inside their uterus for 10 years. That's an extraordinary amount of time to have this device inside your body, dysregulating not only copper, but other metals. And, zinc specifically is critical for so many processes in the body. We can't function optimally if our zinc levels are suppressed because we have a medical device, or I should say, I call it a torture device, creating all these imbalances. And it's not just zinc. Of course, we want copper and zinc to be in relationship with one another. And I like to say they should be happily married. But unfortunately, copper gets angry and then starts taking, that anger out on zinc, and then, problems ensue. But there are a lot of other processes that are significantly impacted. So one of the challenges with copper is that it lowers dopamine and increases norepinephrine in the brain. And that's where we get a lot of that mood and that dysregulation going on. And if we look at things like also the gut microbiome and the role that copper and zinc play in regulating microbes and other metals, specifically in the gut, that's why we see so many yeast infections and UTIs and things like that. So norepinephrine is kind of it's an interesting chemical. It's released by the adrenal glands. It's a regulator of attention and impulsivity, and it's part of the body's fight, flight, and response mechanisms. And it also has a direct impact on heart rate and blood pressure. So women will often come to me and say, my blood pressure is through the roof. I don't understand why. I'm on BP meds. They're not really helping. I'm having, of course, side effects from the meds because, with any medication, at least most of them, what they do in the body is they poison enzymes. And anytime you poison an enzyme in the body, you're going to have challenges. So when I test them and their copper levels are through the roof, I can see why their heart, because, we're energetic chemical beings, right? And copper is a metal. I can see why their heart is misfiring, if you will, and why there's a dysregulation. There's often arrhythmias and things like that. So we always want to be really careful. And I'm also very concerned because there's litigation right now with the paragard, by the way. I forgot to mention that. And in the litigation, there are concerns in the literature about cancer. We've known about that relationship for decades simply because we know that blood vessels and copper is needed to make blood vessels, that those are a part of tumors, right? So tumor growth, when we think of things that are creating that inflammation and that growth, well, we don't want that overloaded in the body. So, there are myriad symptoms that I can, read off to you, but I think basically, I always go back to, this is an inflammatory response in your body. And especially when we're talking about things like cancer and so forth, we just have to be very careful.
It's interesting that you bring that up because, like I said, when we did that testing, my CRP inflammation was
there you go. Yeah.
through the roof. My doctor was like, I have never seen numbers like this before in someone your age. It was really crazy. It was kind of scary. And initially when we did that, we didn't even make the connection with the paragard, which is so funny. It wasn't until like a month later, she was like, you might need to take that thing out because I think that's actually what's causing the inflammation, which is so interesting. So we've talked about this a little bit, but can we dive more into the relationship of copper and zinc? So like you said, you like to think of them being married together, or to be married. And my doctor was trying to up my zinc levels. Can we talk about why just supplementing more zinc is not going to help if you have too much copper in your body?
Yeah, that's another great question. And again, forgive me, I know I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. It's not that copper is bad. It's just that so many people, and this is male and female, and I work with a lot of children and families, and children tend to be copper toxic as well. We can get into that later if you'd like. Yeah. It's not that copper is bad, because people see the term copper toxicity and go, oh my gosh. That's why I prefer the term copper overload. I feel like it's softer. And, we basically want to make sure that zinc and copper are in balance. Not that one is higher than the other, but, we want to make sure that there's a nice balance. So let's talk about zinc. So zinc is essential to all forms of life. And as I shared, it's really important in the production of enzymes. And enzymes, for the most part, almost all of them are proteins. So we need proteins to function as human beings, and we need zinc to help create these proteins. We also need zinc to help with intellectual function. Zinc is a wonderful stress buffer. It enhances mood and memory. It also enhances gene expression of something called metallothionein. Now, we hear a lot about glutathione, but metallothionein, in my opinion, is the star in terms of one of our major antioxidants, because of its ability to bind toxic heavy metals and transport them out of the body. So yes, glutathione is very, very important, but we have to remember that we need zinc to create metallothionein so that we can transport these things out of the body and also help with balancing copper. And I can, there's so many things that are connected to metallothionein. I can go into that if you wish, but I always want people to remember that even if you have something, even if you're taking zinc, if you have something in your body that is creating an inflammatory response, that is jacking up copper, whether it's the IUD or the birth control pill, it's going to be really hard to balance those levels in the body until you get rid of the inflammation. I know it's hard to hear to have something like this removed. I know for the most part, it's easy to just put something in and then forget about it, right? But it's not worth it. I just think that I just want women to remember you're too precious to have to deal with this, and all the side effects that go along with it. And there are so many, as you know, you've seen the forums. I wrote a blog post about the copper IUD, I think, gosh, in 2016. And I still get comments almost, not daily, I would say every week, there's someone is commenting about the side effects that they've had.
I kind of said this already, but I think women may be suffering from symptoms that they're not even connecting to the paragard. Yes. They may just think like, oh, this is just a part of life, or I'm really struggling because of X, Y, like they probably don't even know to make the connection, which is why I really wanted to record this episode, because had I not done the digging and had I not had a doctor that could speak to what I was going through, I would have had no idea. And I probably would have been on that thing for years. I mean, it was wild, the symptoms that I was dealing with. I just remembered another one, and this is something I want to dive into next with you, but I was starting to have like OCD type symptoms too. It's like there was all this stuff happening neurologically that I just thought it was so strange. And I'm so glad that I was able to connect the dots. So how else do people, if someone's listening and they don't have a paragard in, but they think maybe they might have copper overload, how else do you get copper overload in your body?
Yeah, another fantastic question. So it's often inherited. It often runs in families.
Mm.
It runs in my family. Many of the women have been impacted by copper negatively in my family. Breast cancer does run in my family, and I know that copper is a part of that. Methylation is also a big part of cancer. But I think that is often the case, but it can be acquired. Again, the copper IUD being one component, vegan diets are another component. All of the chemicals that we're exposed to. There's so many environmental insults that we have, as you know, Courtney, you talk about this a lot. And I love that that's part of the work that you do to inform people and empower them. But we have to be really mindful of even the water that we're drinking. It needs to be properly filtered. Copper pots and pans, those can be sources of copper. So I think it's all around us. And I think because the system in and of itself is dysregulated, and there are a lot of reasons for that, but there's the epigenetic component of things being passed on from generation to generation. And like you said, people go, well, that just runs in my family. We go gray in our teen years. That just runs in our family. Well, why does that run in your family? Well, you've got a zinc deficiency if gray hair is running in your family starting at that young of an age. And I do see that in my practice. So I encourage everyone that's listening to think about writing a timeline. Think about if you have a copper IUD, or if you're on any form of birth control and you notice that you haven't been feeling well since that time, just write out the symptoms and what you've noticed, because there is going to be a correlation. Everything is always connected. I'm always reminded of that. And I think that there is no coincidence. I think we always need to look at, where is this coming from? What are the root causes? Of course, we go back to root causes. And then how can we go about fixing that so people can be healthy?
So you brought up undermethylated, which is another thing I want to dive into. I have so many questions for you. This is fascinating. So we know with people that have the MTHFR gene, they're not able to methylate B. Is there a genetic mutation like that for copper? Like, is that why it runs in your family, that you maybe can't assimilate copper as well, or you can't assimilate the zinc that balances out the copper? Is that kind of maybe what's happening? Or
can I say something about MTHFR? Do you mind if I just?
Oh yeah, we can also go that direction too, because I want to talk about.
I mean, I just briefly, because I don't want to take up time talking about this tiny little enzyme in the backup pathway of methylation that it might be 30% expressive. I think too much attention is put on MTHFR when we need to look at the entire pathway. And it has very, very little clinical significance, especially when we're talking about mental health. In fact, it has barely any significance. The thing about mutations is we don't know if they're expressing or not. And that's the challenge with a lot of these tests. So when I look at methylation, I'm looking at whole blood histamine, or I'm looking at a methylation panel by doctor's data. This is what gives us accuracy in terms of what is currently going on in your body at present time. So to go back to your question about, is there a mutation that would predispose with regard to copper? My answer to that is, why is there all this oxidative stress to begin with? And it usually starts, if it's inherited, it's going to start way back in the family line, where we see a dysregulation in general of a host of neurotransmitters and hormones and so forth. And what's behind that? Well, copper and also nutrient deficiencies. And that's where that zinc balance comes in. I respect people for their beliefs and what they choose to eat. So this isn't, again, I'm not disparaging here, but if we're talking about things like copper and balancing the system, we can't do that with good quality animal protein. It's just not possible. And I want to be honest with people about that.
With or without?
You cannot balance a system without good quality animal protein.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's so important. And I think that the popularity or rather the negativity around animal protein that has happened over the decades has been really problematic and really impacted people in a significant way. Now, of course, that's shifted now. A lot of people are recognizing the importance of animal protein and the regenerative farm movement, which I'm very passionate about. But I do want to be honest that I think that we have really, really lost our way, and that we need to go back to a sustainable biodynamic form of farming, such as, Polyface Farm and some of the other wonderful farms that we have, so that people can get back to homeostasis. So I know I kind of gave you a long answer there, Courtney, but I wanted to explain that the reason why things misfire is because of nutrient deficiencies and overloads. That's why we see a dysregulation in the system that is passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah, I mean, that's profound. I'm so glad that you went off on that tangent. It was beautiful. It's very important for people to hear. And I speak about this quite often on my podcast as well. You and I share the same value, and that I respect how anyone wants to live their life, how they want to eat, what their morals are around that's fine. I just am here to be a deliverer of the truth, because I want people to have informed consent. As long as you know everything and you can make decisions from a place of honesty and truth about what is going to be best for your health, then that's fine. That's all I really care about, and I do share the same sentiment as you, that it is so incredibly hard to be healthy without having some sort of animal products in your diet. It just is a fact, and it makes it even harder when you do have something like MTHFR or some sort of genetic mutation where a lot of these nutrients in plant foods are really not bioavailable like they are in plant or in animal foods. It just makes it really hard, and a lot of people are really suffering. And there's a massive connection with our mental health to our nutrient deficiencies as well. And a lot of people are struggling mentally. I mean, a lot of people are struggling across the board, and there's a lot of factors happening. It's multifaceted for sure. But I do think a lot of it is diet connected, because we are so disconnected from what it really truly means to eat healthy, especially in this country. We're eating a lot of highly processed foods. We're really pushing for everyone to go vegetarian and vegan right now. And it's just not great for our health.
Yeah, and we can't live on lab-grown protein and milk. We can't live, like you said, on these ultra-processed, genetically modified foods that the powers that be want to push on us. And so I'm going to fight. I'm an advocate for children. I see what this is doing to our kids. It is really heartbreaking. I work with families, as I mentioned. Copper is a big problem in autism. Copper is a big problem in children with behavioral challenges, with ADHD, with OCD. Of course, methylation does play a role there. The gut microbiome, which gets dysregulated with copper, is a major factor there too. And one thing I wanted to add, if I may, Courtney, is that the bioavailability of zinc comes from things like grass-fed beef and lamb. Oysters are also high in zinc, but they also are high in copper. And there's a lot of issues with people being able to really tolerate specifically shellfish, simply because our waters are so contaminated. So I always encourage people, when you go online and you look at those lists, a lot of them are not complete or inaccurate. And that's why I wrote my cookbooks, because I wanted people to have accuracy in terms of lists, what is safe, what isn't. I hate to restrict people any more than is necessary. I want people to enjoy food and have that healthy relationship with food. So if you're not eating meat, I would encourage maybe considering that if you are struggling.
Yeah. I was vegetarian for 5 years, and it was the sickest I've ever been in my whole life. And I was doing everything. This was when I was in school getting my master's in nutrition. So that's, I see this message thrown around a lot on Instagram or just on social media in general. And I was also getting it from people as I started sharing that I was no longer eating vegetarian. And, there's this notion of, oh, you're just not doing it well enough. You're not doing it right. You're not vegan enough. Like, wait for your body to detoxify and adjust. And so I just kept going for 5 years until finally I was like, enough. I'm so sick. I literally had a nutritionist. I left her office crying because she just looked at me and point blank goes, you have to eat meat or you're going to be sick forever. And I remember leaving just sobbing. And I was like, she's so mean. And, this was so horrible. And then looking back, I'm like, she gave me such a gift. That was what someone needed to tell me, because I was so sick and I was not willing to really look at it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm sorry you had that experience, but what a blessing you are to the world now, right? Because you went through that experience. And I feel the same way. I feel that all of the pain and the heartache and the suffering and the suicide attempts and, everything that I went through in my life, now has its purpose because I get to help others that are hurting and in pain. When I was vegan and then raw vegan, I likewise was the sickest I have ever been. My copper levels were through the roof. I wasn't making the connection. See, I think, going back to what you said earlier, there is a disconnect, and brain fog is a big aspect of copper overload, let's be honest, and so are gut infections. So I think there's a disconnect, not intentionally, but just because when your neurotransmitters are misfiring and your dopamine is low and serotonin is dysregulated, it's hard to think clearly and to think, oh, wow, could this be, part of this? And it took me, I'm embarrassed to say, but I did the raw thing for over 3 years. My ponytail was the size of a dime. My face was totally broken out in rashes and acne. I had yeast infections. I mentioned that. I was a size 0, but see, because I was a size 0 and I had an eating disorder, I thought it was fantastic. So I chose to ignore what I was doing to myself. But again, it was a blessing because I get to do what I do today.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry that you went through that. I also, yeah. Oh my gosh. And, I was always that person, in high school. I was very fortunate to never get acne or anything. When I went vegetarian, I had the most insane case of cystic acne. It was the second one would leave, literally a new one would pop up the next day. And this was for 4 years.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
And nothing fixed it until I started eating meat again. Yeah, it was
amazing. Well, your stomach acid gets depleted on a vegan diet. That's something that people don't talk about. Why is stomach acid so important? Well, we need to be able to absorb the nutrients from our food, and stomach acid kills bacteria and yeast and so forth. It keeps our gut healthy, right? We get B12 deficient. It just goes, the list goes on and on and on. So yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes I'll just add in some betaine and my client's acne will be gone in a matter of a couple of weeks. It's really fascinating how that works. Yeah,
it is really fascinating. I was also thinking about, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's this kind of a joke, but it's, there's a lot of this actually happening, where they say on, on TikTok and Instagram that all hot girls have stomach problems or they have IBS. And there's a lot of people are talking about bloating and they're normalizing it and all this stuff. And all I can think about is how there's this movement of everyone going vegetarian and vegan. And then they're like, I'm bloated all the time. That's normal. One, that's not normal. Also, it's not normal to have stomach problems like that. And I think all of this is connected. Everyone is going plant-based thinking that this is the healthiest thing for them. And then they're having all these symptoms. And then we're trying to normalize it online. Like, oh, it's fine. Everyone has this. Well, just because it's normal right now, or like quote unquote normal, that a lot of people have it, does not mean that it's actually normal for humans, for our health. Exactly. Yeah. And I, forgive me, I got off all social media back in, I think, June. That's good. Just because my preference from a moral perspective, I didn't want to support that anymore. And of course, that's no judgment, but so forgive me if I've kind of been out of the loop, but I've been disturbed by certain trends over the years, normalizing things that aren't normal. In my opinion, and I hope you're okay with me saying this, I think that this is a push by big pharma and industry to normalize things, to cover up a lot of what's going on with certain medications and products that they push on people. Absolutely. It's not, bloating is not normal, ladies. If you're watching, listening, bloating, belching, gas, none of those things is normal. If you notice that after eating, even if it's random and you haven't just had a meal, that says that there's something amiss inside your microbiome. Whether there's an actual overgrowth or not, I don't know. But I would encourage you to work with someone that is literate in this area and can help you do this safely. And I need to make sure that I say that about copper and zinc, because you don't want to start taking high amounts of zinc without knowing what your levels are. We also need to look at ceruloplasmin, which is a copper binding protein, another enzyme, right? And we need to see how that's working and where that is, because that's going to help bind to the copper. So there are a lot of things going on in treating copper
dysregulation and making sure that you have ample zinc on board and so forth. So just want to make sure that people are aware of that.
Yeah, I like the saying, test, don't guess. You always want to know what's going on in your body first. Don't just start throwing supplements at it. Work with a highly trained professional that knows what they're talking about and knows all these connections, and they can help you, because you want to see what's going on first before you just start taking all these supplements. Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And I love what you just said, because I feel we're aligned in that. I think there's a big push right now to normalize things that are not normal, and we're just trying to make it normal so that no one really questions it or starts digging into it deeper. But the sad reality that we live in is that there's money to be made in people that are sick. There's medications to be thrown out, surgeries, and et cetera. There's a lot of money to be made off of you when you're sick. And this is why I do what I do, because for me, I find it incredibly empowering to learn about my body and know how to make myself better and well, because we can do that. We have the ability. Our bodies want to be in a state of health.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, Courtney. I think that's really powerful for people to hear. As you know, when you get into disrepair, if you will, and your mood is dysregulated and you're depressed and, having a lot of panic attacks throughout the day, you name it, it's hard to believe that you can heal. I always like to let everyone know, whether it's my show or your show or what have you, healing is always possible. Please know that. If you have the IUD currently and you're having a lot of symptoms, please know that the first step is to get it removed and then work with someone that can help you balance those levels appropriately, that knows how to look at the gut microbiome in relation to the biochemistry. But I think it is so critical. I, for years, never thought I was going to heal. I was very suicidal at different points in my life. I mean, you name it. I struggled with it, and I just did not have faith. But I kept moving forward. In some way, I'd get knocked down, I'd get back up, and I'd start over again. And I haven't struggled for, gosh, I guess it's been about 15 years now. So just know that you can really be in the worst place and feel like you've hit rock bottom, but there is a plan for you. Healing is always possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's going to be really powerful for people to hear, especially for people that are struggling. And so thank you for that. And I'm so sorry that you went through that, but what a wonderful gift to be on the other side and now have the ability to share your experience with others that are struggling, to give them hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
There is, absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. So I mentioned this earlier, and I would love to hear a little bit about this because I also experienced this. Another one of the symptoms that I'd mentioned when I was dealing with that copper overload was a lot of it was mental health aspects. I was kind of feeling paranoid. I had some OCD stuff that started happening that has shown up before in my life, mostly when I've been really stressed out. But I noticed that it was on a really ramped up level and really insane anxiety. I've always struggled with pretty low grade chronic anxiety, but I noticed when I had the paragard in, it was like through the roof.
Yeah. Common.
Yeah.
Very common.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to speak to all that a little bit?
Yeah. So copper, it impacts every body system, right? I talked a bit about antioxidants in the body, how it's pro-inflammatory, how it creates a lot of what we call high oxidative stress. So when dopamine is suppressed, and then I talked about norepinephrine, it's when that happens, we get dysregulation in the brain. We get a lot of inflammation in the brain. And if I could go back to metallothionein, that master antioxidant that in my opinion, I mean, you could say that glutathione and metallothionein have equal billing, but I kind of think metallothionein is more the star. So what does metallothionein do? It's an important protein. It detoxifies mercury. It detoxifies other heavy metals. It helps the immune system. It helps deliver zinc to cells throughout the body. So that's really critical. And it also helps prevent yeast overgrowth, and it works on lots of other things in addition to the gut microbiome. But the main thing that is really protective is the brain and the blood-brain barrier. And when we have a dysregulation of copper and zinc, metallothionein is going to be low. So in other words, the mental health challenges that come along with copper, yes, they're very common. I see them all the time. And that's because copper is really good at significantly lowering dopamine and increasing what we call our inflammatory neurotransmitters, such as norepinephrine. So that's where we can see psychosis when copper is very high. Fibromyalgia is very common. Did an outreach clinic many years ago with the doctors that I work with. And we had a young lady come to the clinic, and she was pulling on her arm like this. She's like, I just, she was, she wasn't in her body, so to speak, right?
Wow.
But it was this pulse of electricity. And, again, copper is a metal. It's a heavy metal. It's a conductor of energy. We are energetic beings. So, of course, it's going to dysregulate the brain and the neurotransmitters, in our brain. So that's what was happening. Copper goes up in pregnancy. I mean, here's another example. It's normal. Copper, as I mentioned, is needed to make blood vessels. Blood vessels are needed to make babies, right? So it's normal for copper to increase during pregnancy because of all of this dysregulation that we see, and people are having a lot of issues detoxifying appropriately because, again, our environment and the diet and so forth, lack of access to clean water, what have you. What's happening is that copper levels are not going back down to normal, and that can be passed on to your child. So that's why I always test before couples conceive. I think that's really critical. We know that ancient cultures always had a preparation diet for at least 6 months before conception, and that's another area that I want to encourage people with. So forgive me, Courtney, I went off on another tangent there. I'm so passionate about this topic, but I hope that answers your question with regard to, again, the brain and copper, because there are, of course, a lot of symptoms that go along with copper overload, but the brain is one of the more significant ones.
Yeah, no, don't ever apologize for tangents. I love it. I love to hear experts talk about their expertise, what they're good at talking about. I think it was really important for people to hear that. So have you dealt with OCD in your life? I'm very intrigued by OCD. Cause I'm curious what is happening with that, because I've always wondered if there is some sort of nutritional deficiency happening, or I'm a very curious person, and I'm always like, okay, but why? What's the root of this?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
So OCD, there's a couple different components. What we call true OCD is a result of undermethylation. And so undermethylation is, I'm undermethylated. I think I mentioned that already.
Can you explain to people what that means really fast?
Yeah. So, sorry about that. I don't want to assume that people know what methylation is. Your audience may know more so, but so methylation is a process that impacts every body system. It's needed to create neurotransmitters. It's needed to create hormones in the body. I mentioned enzymes, again, metallothionein and glutathione are really, those critical antioxidants. So when we're not methylating appropriately, whether it's not enough, which is under, or too much, which is over, so too many methyl groups, then we can have dysregulation, in both areas. About 70% of the population, believe it or not, has a methylation disorder, mostly under methylation. It's a huge component of autism as well. And it's something that I see quite frequently in my practice. Undermethylators were very driven people. Most of us have a higher level of education, the type A kind of personality. And where the OCD comes into play, going back to kind of neurotransmitter production and activity, is because we have those low levels of serotonin and dopamine, because we need those methyl groups to methylate or bring alive those important neurotransmitters. Also hormones as well, whether it's cortisol, stress hormone, or a sex hormone such as estradiol, progesterone, testosterone. Those also need the correct fuel. I like to kind of use the car analogy. A lot of people, like cars, especially men. So using the car analogy of having the right kind of oil, we wouldn't, or the right kind of fuel. So you wouldn't put diesel in a brand new Honda, for example. You'd be giving that car the wrong fuel. And so the challenge becomes for us when we don't make enough methyl groups is that if we're eating these vegan and vegetarian diets, we're getting too much folate. Folate doesn't matter if it's from food, supplements, folic acid, methylated folate, folinic acid, it all strips methyl at the level of DNA. So outside the nucleus of the cell, it will donate some methyl, but inside, which is more important because that's where our instructions are, it strips away 10 times what it donates outside the nucleus in the cytoplasm. And that's a big problem. A lot of people, I know methylated folate is still quite popular, but you're eventually going to bottom out on that nutrient. And we want to just be very, very careful. I'm not saying that folate is a bad nutrient. Obviously, it's needed for myriad processes in the body. But if you are undermethylated, it is going to be challenging, and that can lead to a lot of OCD. The gut microbiome also is a big trigger for OCD as well. So that's why I always want to check that too.
So for someone listening that is maybe struggling with OCD or thinks maybe that they have an undermethylation problem, how do you figure that out? And then what is the solution?
Yeah, with testing, there's a couple of ways that we can test for that. I think I mentioned I do what's called a whole blood histamine test or a methylation profile, and those can give us really good data about how the system is operating. And then, of course, those need to be used with other lab work. And then we put together a treatment plan based on the totality of the labs. And then, so we can bring more methyl into the system. So there are specific methyl donors. SAMe is one of the more common ones. Most people have heard of SAMe. You can buy that as a supplement. But again, going back to zinc, zinc is also needed for methylation to function optimally as well. There's been a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess argument, if you will, maybe that's not the best word, but there's been a lot of confusion around taking zinc supplements. I'm often asked, well, isn't that going to deplete copper? Well, no, if you are not regulating copper appropriately, whether you're low, high, whatever the case may be, we need to make sure that you have that substance that's going to help, like I said, create metallothionein and balance out the system. Now, the dose and the form is going to be specific to the individual. And that's why I don't recommend doing these things on your own. But zinc is critical, even if your zinc level is coming up normal on a blood test. It's needed for all of these systems to function the way that they should.
Yeah. Wow, this is fascinating. I love this.
Yeah, it's really, I know it can get really deep and intense. So I'm happy to go in whatever direction you wish to go in, but it's a big part of what I do. And I think it's one of the reasons why people struggle and aren't really able to move forward appropriately, because they're not always being tested. And, your general doctor is not really going to know about these things, unfortunately. We always hear, well, my labs are normal. My doctor says I'm fine, but I feel terrible. Well, if the doctor doesn't want to do any further investigation, I would encourage you to find another doctor. If they say, oh, it couldn't be the IUD, find another doctor, because you know your body best. And I believe that we're given God-given discernment and intuition, and we know our bodies. If something is off, please don't disregard that.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredibly important component of all of this, because unfortunately, a lot of our just general practitioners were not trained to handle all of these modern chronic diseases that we are now facing. And that's not to shit on your doctor at all. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that we need to recognize that a lot of these just general practitioners, they don't know what they're doing in regard to everything that we're dealing with now. So we need to find more highly trained individuals like functional medicine doctors, integrative doctors, people that know the right tests to do, what to look for, the symptoms, et cetera. And you also need to make sure that you find a doctor that listens to you, because if you have a doctor that's just saying, no, you don't need that, like, no, this is all in your head, your lab work is fine, then you need to find a new doctor. You need to have a doctor that sits down and listens to you and recognizes that while they may be the expert on the human anatomy, you're the expert on your own body. And you need someone to meet you halfway.
Yeah. I thought that was really beautifully put. And I really appreciate you saying that, because I think, well, I mean, obviously the last almost 3 years has really shown a lot, right, about the system. But I think that if you are going to be providing care. And, my expertise is in what we call nutrient therapy. If you're going to be providing care, I think it's really, really in your best interest to understand how nutrients work in the body.
Yeah.
And how, the appropriateness of them, the different forms. I mentioned zinc has many, many different forms. Magnesium has many different forms. We always want to be careful. I have people come to me. Here's another example, if I can share this. People will come to me with a hair tissue mineral analysis, and their copper will be low, and they'll think that automatically means that their body copper is low. Or their zinc is high. Oh my gosh, I've got too much zinc. Well, that's not how a hair analysis works. If a zinc level is high in the hair and also low in the blood, I don't like that at all. That is a major problem. That means that you are depleting your zinc stores, usually due to high oxidative stress. So I give that as an example because I think people are getting confused. Maybe it's misinformation from I don't know where, but this is where I just, again, just please work with someone that has been trained in these areas, that understands how to read these labs and understands how nutrients work in the body. It's just so critical. I just can't stress that enough.
Yeah, that's really important. So I want to be mindful of our time. Is there anything else that you think is really important for people to hear about what we talked about today? I think just to leave the audience and our listeners with, again, if you are struggling, healing is there. Just know, and this isn't, some little flowery, Instagram post about you can heal yourself and, rah, rah. I really do believe that that's true. And I think it's just a matter of finding that right person and being exposed to podcasts like this one, sharing information. Obviously I'm very passionate about this topic because I've struggled with it myself. You have as well. We know what this feels like, and it doesn't always have to be this way. As you said earlier, Courtney, the body has an amazing ability to heal. You don't need to go on a green juice cleanse to get your liver functioning the way that it should. You don't need to do things that are probably, often, make things worse. But just find someone to help guide you that's going to be loving and caring and supportive and meet you where you're at. And you will get there. You will get there. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. So before we go, I like to ask all of my guests before I leave, this is about you and your personal health non-negotiables. So what are your non-negotiables, no matter how busy and crazy your day is? What are things that you do to prioritize your own health?
Yeah, food is a non-negotiable for me. This may sound crazy, but I don't eat out in restaurants. I may meet a friend at a restaurant, but it's a non-negotiable for me. I don't drink alcohol. And it's my feeling good in my body and sleeping like a baby every night and having good energy so that I can do the work that I've been called to do is critical. So I just, I go to bed early, and I just will not budge on my diet.
Yeah, it's really important. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I wanted to keep going. I have so many more questions I want to ask you, so I'm probably gonna have to bring you back on if you would come back.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I agree. There's so many more things we could dive into, but I realize we're limited on time, and I'm just so grateful for you, Courtney. And I just want to say, keep up the great work. I mean, you're doing amazing work. And sharing, what you know and your expertise and your knowledge and, the platform that you have. We need more people and strong, beautiful women like you in the world to be a positive inspiration for others. So thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I want to mirror that back to you. You're doing incredible work, and you're really helping a lot of people. And we all have different roles in this. And I think this is a really important thing that we're tackling right now in our modern times. And so I'm grateful for you and the work that you do as well, because you're really helping a lot of people.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Please let everyone know that it's listening where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at eatfor.life, not .com, EATFOR.LIFE. And again, I'm no longer on social media, so please join me on my website.
Awesome. Thank you so much.